Um, that leads me to a question based on something I read that you had said before. You actually spoken about how in your professional experience, you've noticed how media companies actually have what you called an aversion to direct fan dialogue.
Mhm.
I remember you said that in one of your posts. Is that like, can you dive into that, that aversion to fan dialogue? Because you're right, the fans are shaping the dialogue just as much now, right? So it's like, how can companies, um, steer away from that and actually steer away from that aversion to fan dialogue? Like, how would you coach them, as a consultant or something?
When when I first got into comic books and video games, I
Mhm.
was an
At
editor
Valiant, right? Her
at
Valiant.
Valiant. Well, very
That's right.
good, Valiant
Mm,
Comics.
mhm.
Part of my responsibilities at the time was to actually open up letters that were written by fans on paper, put into
Wow.
envelopes, and mailed to us. And we get dozens or even hundreds of letters every month. And so I'd have to go through them to pick which letter was going to be put in the comic book,
Mhm.
right? Um, Sometimes I'd get a negative letter, so the
Okay.
fan didn't like what was going on,
Right.
and I would hand it to the editor of the comic, and they'd say, "Well, I'm not going to publish that.
Mm.
It's too negative." Or the bosses didn't want too much of that stuff in the comic. They wanted fans to be positive and complimentary. And sometimes I would see patterns of this kind of feedback,
Right.
which indicated to me that there was a problem in the comic book. The story wasn't going
Mm.
in the direction that the fans were interested in, and I worried that fans would start dropping off and not
Mhm.
buying the book anymore.
Mhm.
But when I told this to my bosses, they would say, "It's just a handful of fans. Who cares?" And I would think, well, this kid took the time to
Mhm.
a letter, put it into an envelope, and mail it to me.
Mhm.
So it means that this fan cares about the
Right.
product.
That's right.
Um, and then I started seeing more of this on the internet. They used to have bulletin boards
That's
devoted
right.
to specific comic books,
That's right.
and I saw a lot more negativity there. And some of it didn't have to do with the stories; it had to do with the packaging of the comic books and
Oh,
things
wow.
like that. Sometimes we put too many different covers on a comic, and the fans had to buy them all.
Variants, right. Yeah.
Variant,
Yeah.
exactly. Oh,
Yeah.
Enrique.
Yeah.
So, so I would report this
Right.
again to my bosses, and they say, "Who cares? That's just a handful of people." And I go, it's hundreds of people. And they go,
Mm.
"Sell tens of thousands of comics, so it doesn't matter."
Mm.
And guess what? It mattered.
That's
It
right.
mattered. This held true. I felt as we moved into video games and movies, as my
Right.
career progressed, I would always look at what the fans were saying, and the fans were the red flag. They were
Mm.
the canary in the coal mine.
That's
If
right.
if there were a bunch of them who love your product who suddenly don't, and who are complaining about certain aspects of it, you could see
Mhm.
patterns, and you can make adjustments on the fly, right? So that you didn't lose your customer,
Mhm.
your audience. And I took advantage of that in the products that I built, but very few of my colleagues did that same thing. So,
Mm.
what was interesting is as I moved into the movie business, uh,
Mm.
I would talk about that, and I got the exact same feedback from the movie people. Who cares? You
Right.
know, they're just fanboys.
Right. Right.
And I attribute all of the successes that I've had not just to telling a story. There's art in telling a story
Mhm.
independently, and to want to truly express what is deep in your heart. as a piece of artwork.
Right.
Uh, uh, but we're telling stories that are designed to appeal to tens or hundreds of millions of people.
That's
Um,
right.
if that's what you want, you do need to listen to them. You
Mm,
have some sense of who they are and what's going on with them if you want to persist and create franchises, create a truly global, popular intellectual properties. And only now, after I've been in the business for 30 years, are the studios going,
Jeff was
maybe
right.
we should look into this.
That's right. That's that's amazing. It sounds to me like you were wearing two hats there, and you were a pioneer, one of the pioneers to two things that is very common in corporate now. And these two hats I see based on what you just told us, these two hats I see you wearing are community management, right? You were like a prototype community manager,
Yeah,
really listening to the audience, creating a dialogue back and forth with the audience. A lot of people who are kind of like, digital natives, right? Like now might not remember Nielsen ratings,
yeah.
right? So it's like you only needed one household and they would judge, 1,000 households based on that one household.
Right.
So
That's
that's
right.
what you were doing.
Yep.
Um, so that was awesome. So you really had some kind of like community management going on there. And also,
Sure.
again, when something else I see that you did there, another hat you were wearing, you were really doing what is like one of the, if not the, crux of marketing right now. You were doing audience listening and performance map marketing, performance based analytics.
That's
At the
correct.
end of the day, you were doing it a real, um, grassroots way of
That's
like,
right.
okay, we got X amount of these letters, this is numbers, this is quantitative research here, this is what's going on, and I'm giving you these numbers. So this one fan could represent 10 fans or represents 100 fans. So you just think it's 10 fans, but these are just the ones that wrote in. So I think maybe we should add, put a value to this one fan. Maybe he represents like 10 or 100 fans. And I think we need to listen. You were like a pioneer in community management and performance analytics, marketing and research. And I think that's crucial because one thing I noticed is that a lot of stakeholders and decision makers in corporate, they might hear the word transmedia storytelling and they may be like, okay, sounds very creative,
Mhm.
but I need the linear aspect of it too. Where are the hard numbers? And that's something they don't know that you and Starlight Runner Entertainment provide also that you wear both hats over there. Am I correct to say that?
It's integral.
Hmm.
So creative and audience and technology. Everything. We have to pay attention to all of it because these are projects that are going to get exposure on a global level.
Mm.
So we do need to get that done. I wasn't the only one doing it.
Okay.
The director Peter Jackson
Mm.
was concerned because the fans of Tolkien and
Of
Lord of
Lord of
the
the
Rings,
Rings. Hmm.
they were complaining about, oh, he can't possibly get it done. They were doubting and criticizing anything that they saw or heard about the Lord of the Rings, but they really didn't know who Peter Jackson was or what his intention was and what work in terms of detail he was putting into the project. And their doubts were leaking into big media. So
Oh
the
wow.
magazines and news shows were saying, and this is a magnificent project, but there are doubters. So it
Right, right,
hurt the story a little bit. So
right.
Peter decided to go directly into the fandom and talk to them on the message boards. This was in the very late 1990s, 2000, 2001.
What?
He was communicating with them as the films were being developed early, and
Wow.
and he got them on his side, because all they really wanted was to know that they were being listened to,
which is
and
crucial.
that there was a dialogue there. And he showed photographs of the props and stuff like that. It was a real a community effort. And then they organized something called OneRing.net, which was
What?
a network of Tolkien fan clubs that were in support of the Lord of the Rings movies. And that was fantastic. That was happening at the same
Wow.
time that I was doing the same thing with Turok and Magic the Gathering, some of the
Mhm.
early projects that I worked on.
Oh man, I want to dive all into that.